Alrighty, we are live from New York on a Friday night. You are here for Bet On It with Jerry and Jordan. It's just Jordan tonight. It's Friday night. Hope you guys are drinking something warm or cold, whatever your preference is. Jerry is off tonight watching the ice sport with his son, the one with the flat ball. I don't know why he would choose to do that, but I won't judge him too hard for it. So, tonight I'm going to be talking about the NFC and AFC South, talking about their off season a little bit, the upcoming draft for them, the potential holes that each team needs to fill in each division. Before we do that, I'm going to just talk about some generic sports news. If you guys are living under a rock, St. Peter's just advanced to the Elite Eight, becoming the first number 15 seed ever to advance this far. What a fantastic story. If you are telling me that you had them going this far, stop lying because you didn't. Purdue was kind of my last hope in my bracket, so I don't think many people have much hope unless you have Duke advancing and winning it all, which I know a few people do for Coach K's last season. I've had a whirlwind of activity in the NFL over the last few weeks. Tyreek Hill surprisingly being traded to the Miami Dolphins to go live that Miami life and save some money on his income taxes during the upcoming season. So, a big opportunity for Tua this year, signing Armstead to that big contract to be their new left tackle. Waddle and Tyreek Hill, Mike Gesicki still hanging around, so that's going to be a fun team to watch. A lot of opportunity for that team, a new coaching staff, a new regime. So we'll see what happens there. But let's talk about the AFC and NFC South tonight. I'm going to kick it off with the AFC South. So let's start with the Jaguars, who have had a really interesting offseason, very active. Recapping some players that they've brought in, Christian Kirk on that huge contract for $84 million. Him and Zay Jones. Zay Jones, 3 years, 30 million. Seems like a little bit of an overpay, but Zay Jones is going to have an opportunity to carve out a role in Jacksonville, providing some weapons for Trevor Lawrence. Brandon Sheriff coming over to solidify an offensive line that was among one of the league's worst last season. Signed Foyesade Oluokun to be their middle linebacker. Had a huge breakout season in 2021, going to really anchor that Jaguars defense for years to come. Brought in Darius Williams, Evan Ingram, another weapon for Trevor Lawrence. They did lose a few players so far this offseason. Miles Jack, DJ Chark, two of the bigger ones, Tavon Bryan, who played on the defensive line for him. Jaguars find themselves after a 3-14 season, and once again an interesting predicament. Back-to-back number one overall picks. There's been a lot of conversation here. A lot of people up until the last few weeks were assuming they were going to go offensive line. There's a potential they still go in that direction. Um, in that case, it's going to be a toss-up for them between Evan Neal and Icky. I think with them re-signing Cam Robinson, and I know I'm not alone here, they're most likely going in the direction of Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive lineman from Michigan. Him and the real Josh Allen will have an opportunity to form a really scary duo on the edges for the Jaguars. Um, I mentioned Brandon Sheriff. So the Jaguars do still have their offensive line isn't perfect, but it's much improved compared to last year. I think that it's not a bad play if they go in the direction of taking an offensive lineman. They do have a ton of picks this year. That's something I want to mention. They have 12 total picks, and that's among one of the league leaders. So a lot of them are later picks. They really stacked up in the sixth and seventh rounds, but they're going to have an opportunity to rebuild. Doug Peterson working with Trevor Lawrence, some new weapons, a better offensive line. They still could use kind of that cornerstone player on that defensive line alongside Josh Allen. So Aiden Hutchinson's probably a direction they're going to go in there. Keep an eye out on Evan Neal and Icky as well to see if that's a direction that they go in. Next, let's talk about the Houston Texans. They have the third and 13th overall picks. They acquired that one from the Browns just recently in a trade that you may have heard about. Texans were 4-13 last season. Going through their offseason thus far, no real big moves. They re-signed Royce Freeman. They brought in Kyle Allen to be a backup to Davis Mills. As of right now, unless they take a quarterback in this year's draft, it looks like they're committed, Lovey and the staff, to giving Davis Mills a crack at it, which I don't necessarily disagree with, if we're being honest about it. He looked really good at the end of last season, flashed some promise. Coming out, I compared him to a guy that could potentially be Kirk Cousins. I don't think he's a guy that's ever going to be a superstar, but I think he can be an above average quarterback in this league, and I think he deserves a full season to prove that he can do that. So they did lose a few pieces defensively: Justin Reed, Jacob Martin, Terrence Mitchell, AJ Moore. They lost Tyrod as well. Oh, and some Deshaun Watson guy, but he didn't play for him last season, so not a huge loss. I mean, well, a huge loss for them, but not comparing it to last season. So let's go through their main needs. Everywhere you go, they say quarterback. I'm not going to say that. I don't agree with that. I think the verdict's still out. I guess I'm a part of the Davis Mills fan club as of tonight. I didn't think I'd really ever say that out loud, but guess I am. Offensive line, cornerback, safety. This is a team, when you go through their depth chart, they need some talent, if we're being honest about it, across the board. So with those two picks, I think they're in a situation where you're going to see them, especially with Lovie Smith, they're going to need to add some pieces defensively. They need to shore up that offensive line, whether it's Davis Mills or whoever else for the foreseeable future. So if Aiden Hutchinson ends up going number one to the Jaguars, that puts the Texans in a really good spot to really just pick based on value. Pick the best player on the board. They need talent. Don't overthink it. So this is where you could see Evan Neal, Thibodeau, Icky go. With that number 13 spot, or even number 3, I've seen him all over the board. Trayvon Walker, the edge rusher. Uh, it's going to be interesting. I think he goes before that number 13 pick. So realistically, there you're looking at a guy like Jermaine Johnson. But I think they have 11 picks this year. Obviously, through the Deshaun Watson trade, they acquired a bunch more over the next few years. This is going to be a time period of rebuilding for them. So to me, they just have to accumulate as much talent as possible. And if Davis Mills doesn't work out, the next guy that they bring in is in a fantastic situation. They will have a better offensive line, a better defense, and that's the way that I always, you'll hear me talk about it time in and time out. In order to build a successful team, you don't pick the quarterback and then build a team. You have a solid team and framework in place, and then you go and get your guy. That's the way that I believe you build. We've seen many quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, careers ruined because teams didn't follow that formula. So, um, we'll see what they do. They have a lot of opportunity here with 11 picks in this upcoming draft. I think that there's a lot of depth this year offensive linemen and edge rushers. So I think realistically you see them go in that direction. But once again, if there's a lot of value and somebody ends up, especially at 13, what's going on, Kyle? If you see a guy, we'll say Sauce Gardner. I just want to say his name as many times as I can every episode, so I'm going to sneak that in when I can. But if he was the slip for 13 as an example, I mean, why not? Derek Stingley, we don't know where he's going to fall. They're a team that they need talent. They could potentially afford to take a chance on him at 13, even though it's not necessarily a top need of theirs. It's kind of an open book right now. They can kind of write whatever script they want to at this point because they have a lot that they need. Heading next to the Tennessee Titans, they pick at 26 this year. They have 7 picks in this year's NFL draft. Coming off a very semi-successful season, I guess. They won the division, went 12-5, but very underwhelming for me. This is a team that just is so disappointing. And as long as Ryan Tannehill is their starting quarterback, I don't believe this is a team that's going to find itself over the hump. That's just the reality. Is I think this is a team that's a quarterback away from being Super Bowl contenders. They're kind of locked into Ryan Tannehill. They have a lot of faith in him. I don't have a problem with Ryan Tannehill. I think he's an above average quarterback in this league, but time and time again, it's been proven you need more than an above average quarterback to win in the NFL unless the rest of your roster is just flawless. That's just kind of the reality of today's NFL. So, we'll see. The biggest need that they have outside of, in my opinion, quarterback, which is rude. Sorry, Ryan Tannehill, not sorry. Their secondary did struggle quite a bit last season. I don't see them going in another direction except cornerback in the first round. They could use a little more depth on the offensive line. They could use another linebacker. Only 7 picks in this year's draft, but corner was a real weak spot for them. A lot of teams, if they had the time, because their front seven was dominant, if they had the time, a lot of teams picked apart that secondary. So I think that's something they're going to be addressing very quickly in this draft. They also lost Janoris Jenkins, Julio, Roger Saffold. With Roger Saffold gone, they're probably going to be looking at an interior lineman at some point. They recently acquired Robert Woods, kind of replacing Julio. So Julio and AJ Brown will definitely be a nice combo for them. If they're looking realistically in that range, you're going to be looking at Andrew Booth, Trent McDuffie in that range of cornerback. So that's the direction I would expect them to go pretty consistently last year. That was the reason that they were losing games. So I think that's going to be the number one thing they address. Last is the Colts. They only have 7 picks in this year's draft. They first pick at number 42 after a very, very, very disappointing season. This is a team that I had a lot of faith in. I thought, a lot of us were assuming they were going to make the playoffs before collapsing against the Jaguars. Moved on from Carson Wentz, brought in Matt Ryan, which I think is going to make a huge difference for them. They're going to be my division winners. I can tell you that right now with that defense. Adding Ngakwe this offseason as well. This is a team that really, really solidified itself this offseason. I think that they're going to be contenders. They're going to continue to run, especially with Matt Ryan at this point in his career. You don't want him carrying an offense, but luckily for him, he doesn't have to. He's going to have a top 5 offensive line. He's going to have probably the best young running back in the NFL behind him. He's going to have a great defense. I'm not saying this is a Rams like situation, but it feels like it potentially could. This is going to be Matt Ryan's opportunity to show whether he was just a lot of people are saying after that run by Stafford that he's a Hall of Fame player. This is going to be Matt Ryan's opportunity. Matt Ryan's got an MVP on his resume, had a great career. See if he can add Super Bowl champion to it. I would expect the Colts to go in the direction of either adding a receiver in the second round. Behind Michael Pittman, I'm still not sold. Um, what will be better, Philip Rivers as a Colt or Matt Ryan as a Colt? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was reading Kyle's comment here. I personally believe it'll be Matt Ryan. Philip Rivers, especially and don't get me wrong, the one thing I will say is Matt Ryan has been declining. We were talking about this in a group chat just the other day. If you look over his last 3 seasons, Matt Ryan's QBR has slowly been declining. He's not the quarterback that he once was, but to me, the Colts are the kind of team where they need a quarterback, not necessarily that's going to win them games, but they need a guy that isn't going to lose them games. And that sounds crazy. Matt Ryan's, I mean, he's not just a game manager. That's not giving him enough credit, but I felt to me a lot with Philip Rivers and Carson Wentz, they were legitimately just throwing the game away, making untimely throws in absolutely the worst situation. So I think they have more success with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, throughout the course of his career, I mean, earlier in his career was a little more of a gunslinger, but he's been a little more conservative over the later part of his career. So I don't think he's quite at risk of losing the Colts as many games. So I think it goes better for Matt Ryan, but I think they do need to bring him in another receiver behind Michael Headset turned off there. They need to bring in somebody else behind Michael Pittman. That's a reality for them. They could use another cornerback as well. They lost Rocky Sin this offseason as well. So you'll probably look for him with those picks, add some weapons for Matt Ryan, solidify that secondary. They lost a little bit of their offensive line depth, which doesn't seem like the biggest deal, but if they have any injuries, that could potentially become an issue this upcoming season. So these are all depth picks for them, and I would expect them to go in that direction. All right, that's it. As I mentioned, if I had to give it a quick go at how I think this division is going to finish this year, and I'll dive into this. I usually do very in-depth standing predictions every year. Last season, I believe I only missed 2 playoff teams. I actually went through the entire schedule and I predict each game and predict the standings. Believe I missed the Cowboys and I didn't have faith in their defense. Oh, that's on me. That was my bad. Sorry, Cowboys. And then I missed the Bengals. I believe those were the only two. There might have been a third one in there. Only 2 or 3 playoff teams I missed last year. But if I had to just, it's early. We still got more off season here. We still got a draft, but I would probably be going Colts, Titans, Jags, Texans. I like what the Jags have done. They have a lot of picks in the next few years. This is going to be a good opportunity to see what Doug Peterson's made of, see if he's able to develop a young team, because this is going to be most likely the youngest team in the NFL. Um, the biggest thing to look out for this season is Trevor Lawrence's development. You know, a lot of people are throwing away year one. I saw some flashes of the Trevor Lawrence that we thought we were going to see in year one, so I'm not throwing in the towel. I think he's going to have a lot more time this year, especially once they're probably going to address that line even more so in the draft with their plethora of picks, 12 this year. So I think the Jags finish ahead of the Texans. I think the Jags could surprise a little bit. I'll say that. I don't want to be overly optimistic because it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that feels like a little bit of a trap, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think a team like that, you just want to see them take a step forward. If they win 5 games this year, I mean, that's a big step forward. After back-to-back years of having the number one overall pick, and I'll have to look at their schedule and dive into it. But 5 or 6 wins, I think, is definitely in the realm of possibility for Jacksonville. So let's head over to the NFC then. Kick it off first with the Carolina Panthers. They only have 6 picks in this year's draft. They start off at number 6 overall as their first pick. So, going through their offseason a little bit, they have acquired Austin Corbett, guard, Xavier Woods in the secondary, Rashard Higgins. They got Johnny Hecker. I will miss him in LA. They lost Hassan Reddick defensively and Daquan Jones, who actually is from my area. The 607 representing. He actually just opened up a bar around here, so he went over to the Bills. But Panthers were 5-12. They spent a ton, every single pick last year, on the defensive side of the ball. Phoenix says, "Oh boy, the Lions are going to win the NFC this year." The Lions are the king of the NFC until someone else tells me otherwise. So don't tell me otherwise. I'm not a Lions fan. I'm a Rams fan. I actually am a season ticket holder. So it was a great year for me. So I'm still on cloud 9 right now. So anyway, back to the Panthers. Their biggest need now, there's been a lot of rumblings. They need a quarterback. Sam Darnold is not the answer. He's been erratic. He's been turnover prone. And it's one of those situations where I didn't love. You can't have Matthew Stafford back. I'm sorry. He's ours forever. And I lost my train of thought. Now I'm thinking about the Rams. We talked about the Rams a few weeks ago. I was very down on them. I'm hoping to hear good news about Bobby Wagner, a big acquisition. I don't know. I need something else exciting for me to be excited about the Rams next season. The Rams have the toughest strength of schedule in 2022, which makes me a little nervous. I think you could see them potentially only win 9 or 10 games, which maybe they sneak in. Well, in the NFC, they probably get into the playoffs. AFC, they're probably bottom few winning 9 games. But the throwing Jared Goff in your first. No, I'm gonna pass on that. I mean, we got our suit. We got what we needed out of Matthew Stafford, but I want to run it back. Give us one more year with him, and then I'll consider it. The Panthers, I mentioned Sam Darnold. I hated Sam Darnold coming out of USC. I'm just going to preface this by saying that is he was erratic at USC, and I don't like quarterbacks who show poor decision making skills in college. That's the reality. Is a lot of times you see that trend continue in the NFL. The game only speeds up. Very rarely do you see a guy making critical mistakes at the college level magically fix that in the NFL. So I was not a big Sam Darnold fan at all. They need to address that quarterback position. Is this the year to do it? I don't. They could be in a position to get Malik Willis. I don't love this quarterback class, but if I was going to take a stab at a guy, take a chance on Malik Willis. I think Kenny Pickett will be a starting caliber quarterback in this league. I'm not going to bash him. I was also horribly wrong about Justin Herbert, so maybe I know nothing about quarterback play, but I tend to seem to hit more on running backs and receivers when it comes to scouting. But um, there's been a lot of rumblings. They want to go after Kenny Pickett. It seems like I have a feeling that's a direction they're going to go in after addressing that defense in last year's draft. A very young core defensively. They have a lot of potential, and I think they could be a sneaky pick to be a top 10 defense this year. Um, to me, it's probably either going to be one of those top quarterbacks or you're going to see them go in the direction of offensive line. They had a bottom 5 offensive line this year, and that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't take a young quarterback unless you're 100% keeping them on the bench, because they need to build up that offensive line. Otherwise, they're putting a young quarterback in a really terrible situation. So, I talked about that already. That's not the way that I believe you build a team. They don't have a lot of picks this year, so they need to use them wisely. Almost every mock that I've seen has them taking Charles Cross, which is probably the direction they should go in. Once again, we'll see how the first few picks land. If the Jaguars don't go in the direction of offensive line, maybe you see Icky or Evan Neal fall to this point. That's a possibility, but if I'm the Panthers, I'm going after one of those top offensive linemen. They should be able to get one of those top 3 guys, and it's a need for them. Yes, they need a quarterback, but let Sam Darnold stink for one more. Honestly, I don't know why they're not interested in Baker Mayfield. I'd throw Baker Mayfield in there. That's a team that feels like they could take a chance on Gardner Minshew too. I mean, I wouldn't run Sam Darnold. I would literally try anybody else at this point. So maybe they make a move before the season starts. Who knows? That seemed like a team to me that was going to go after a guy like Mariota as a short-term solution before. But to me, that's why you go out, you get a guy like, we'll just say Gardner Minshew, keep him for 2 years, draft a quarterback next year. The class looks a lot better, and then let them develop if your offensive line is still in a bad situation, and keep playing Gardner Minshew until your rookie is ready. So they just need a guy like that, and I believe Gardner Minshew is a starting quarterback in this league. Don't get me started on him. Look at his numbers in Jacksonville. He had fantastic numbers in Jacksonville. If he can do that there, give him a solid team with some weapons, and Gardner Minshew is a starting quarterback in this league. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about today, but I just need to get that off my chest. Happy Friday, by the way, everybody. All right. Next, the Atlanta Falcons. Pick at number 8 this year. They have 9 total picks in this year's NFL draft. Just got rid of Matt Ryan, brought in Marcus Mariota on a 2-year deal, who's going to fill in that role for them for 2 seasons. This is a team that's probably going to be pretty terrible this year and is going to go after one of those top options next year. Defensively, they have a lot of work to do. AJ Terrell was an absolute revelation. Holy cow, that was critical for them last year. But they also brought in Casey Hayward, so that secondary might actually not be bad, but they could use an edge rusher, could use a linebacker and a safety. With no Calvin Ridley, they could definitely use a receiver. they still need to find a running back. I mean, I like Cordero Patterson. I don't know if I'm still trusting him to be my 3 down guy. So they could bring in a quarterback or a quarterback, geez, maybe, but they could bring in a running back in the second round and get one of the top guys. So realistically, you're not going to see them go that way unless they, trade up late in the first round to take Brees Hall. That's always a possibility. But realistically, at number 8, I see a lot of people mocking a wide receiver to them. It's possible we see the first wide receiver come off on the board at number 8. Chris Olave, Drake London, take your pick. It kind of depends what direction. It seems like they are going to be looking for a little more of a field stretcher. That's the direction I would expect them to go in. If I'm them, I still try to build up that defense. I'd be going edge rusher here. Um, I'd probably be going in the direction of Trayvon Walker if he falls. I don't think I like Trayvon Walker. I'm a little biased, but I like Trayvon Walker. I think that he probably is not going to be there. Depends who you are and who you ask. They're in a great landing spot too, depending on where Kyle Hamilton goes, who I feel like nobody has any idea. I've seen him at 2, I've seen him at 13, I've seen him all over the place. He would be a great building block for this defense. And like I said, this is a team where I think they have more needs than people are. I know they were 7-10. They weren't terrible last year, but this is a team that feels like it has more holes than we're really most people are talking about. So, I don't know if I want to bring in a playmaker here. It's a direction I could see him going. If they're looking to go linebacker, maybe they go Devin Lloyd. Seems a little early for him, but he's the best linebacker on most people's board in this year's class. So Falcons, I think they're in a situation you go best player available. They really don't need a corner. Like I said, with Terrell and Casey Hayward there, they're pretty solid there. But realistically, this is going to be a spot where you see. I said Olave earlier. I meant Garrett Wilson. What do I know? Garrett Wilson, Drake London seem to be the 2 receivers off first. Kyle Hamilton. They have some options here. You don't see a lot of people talk about their offensive line and then potentially going after an offensive lineman. Their offensive line was okay last year. It's one of those things that's weird for me. I played offensive line my entire life. I'm a big believer that's where people need to start. But depending on what metric you go by, the Falcons, I saw Pro Football Focus had them as a 27th offensive line. And they're in a weird spot where probably there's not great value at the offensive line spot. But, if one of those linemen happens to fall, which I'd be really surprised, especially with the Giants, Panthers, Texans, Jets all ahead of them, I'd be shocked if one of the top 3 linemen fell to him. But if a guy like Charles Cross did somehow fall, that's the direction I would go. And this is a line that everywhere I go, people are like, oh, the Falcons line is fine. Is it though? It's really not. So I think it's more of a matter of where they're picking, and there's not a lot of value to be had there. So realistically, you're going to probably see them add a playmaker or add to that defense, which, that's kind of a generic comment, but there's just a lot of options for them. I would personally go best player available building that defense up unless there's one of those linemen available. So, I'd go Kyle Hamilton if he's there personally. Yeah, that's the direction that I would personally go in. Let's see. Who's next here? We have the New Orleans Saints picking at number 18. They have 7 total picks this season. They lost Marcus Williams, who is listed as their only loss really this year. Jameis is going to be back playing quarterback for them for this year and probably the year after. A lot of people have the Saints taking a quarterback. I think that's interesting. I thought Jameis showed a lot of promise. I don't know if I'm ready. If I'm the Saints, I don't know if I'm ready to take a quarterback in the first round. I really don't think I am. If you want to trade up late in the first and get a guy like Desmond Ritter, we'll say I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. But I think Jameis showed me enough early in the season where I don't want to spend that kind of capital on him. That's just where Falcons. Football Outsiders had the Falcons ranked 20th in O-line. Yep, 20th in sack rate. Yeah, not great. Yeah, and like I said, Pro Football Focus had them at 27. It's funny. Everyone I've talked to, they're like, "Oh, their line is fine." I'm like, "It's kind of not though." So once again, it kind of depends on who's available there. That would be the direction I'd go in, but I don't know if they're. I'm all about value too. There's probably not going to be great value to be had there. So, and realistically, is Marcus Mariota their future? No. So if they don't solve that offensive line problem next year, are the Falcons that concerned about it? Probably not. Going back to the Saints, though, yeah, I thought Jameis showed enough to where he deserves an opportunity. Is he a guy that's going to win them a Super Bowl? I mean, I'm not going to be that guy that says he's going to, but I thought he showed enough to where he should be, I'll say, comfortably their quarterback this year and definitely next. And see where it goes. This is a team with a very good offensive line. Um, their defense was very inconsistent last year. Uh, in 2020, this is one of the best defenses in the league. So I think they definitely underwhelmed last year. They have different directions they could go in. I mentioned the cornerback. I think is definitely a need for them. They could definitely add a playmaker. People are relying on Michael Thomas to come back and be Michael Thomas. I don't know. We don't know. I mean, nobody. We can sit here and debate. Oh, Michael Thomas is going to come back and be elite. He's not. But the reality is, we just have to let it play out. But even if he comes back and is elite, who's their second option? Yeah, I mean, it's no Alvin Kamara at this point, I guess. It's nobody great, so I could see them going in that direction. If they in corner, I think this is the range where you're going to see a lot of corners come off the board too. This is where Andrew Booth, McDuffie, guys in that range, I think potentially go. This is also a great spot for them if they want to go get Chris Olave. And if Michael Thomas is back, he is more of a short route runner. They're going to need a guy that can stretch the field. So if they're going after someone, I see Olave, Traylon Burks, Jamison Williams, I think would be the three options. That'd be the direction I go in. I like what I saw from Traylon Burks quite a bit, so I would personally go in the direction of Traylon Burks if I'm the Saints. But, it's going to be an interesting year. A lot of their success this year is going to hinge on what happens with Jameis. And it's a big year for Jameis to prove, he keeps getting these tiny deals. Is someone going to commit to him long term as a quarterback, or is he going to kind of float around for the rest of his career? I think that'll be kind of interesting. All right, let's see. Last, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who pick at 27. They have 7 picks in this year's draft. Um, a little bit about their offseason. They acquired Shaq Mason on the offensive line, Russell Gage, Logan Ryan. They lost and got back Tom Brady, who apparently is going to the Dolphins. Now, we'll see. I don't know about that. But they also lost on the offensive line Alex Kappa, who went over to the Bengals, Jordan Whitehead, and O.J. Howard. Um, the biggest needs for them, they could use another defensive lineman. I personally think they could use another edge rusher across from Shaq Barrett. I don't see a lot of people listing that as a need for him. That's one of the top. I had a, a edge rusher, adding someone next to Vita Vea, and then also addressing a safety spot. So some names there you could see: Boye Mafe, Daxton Hill, Louis Cine, Logan Hall, George Karliftis. Kind of, this is a spot where it's based on best available. I really like George Karliftis if he's still there. I think that he's a guy that could be a great addition across from Shaq Bear. Do I think he's going to make it this far? I personally don't think so. So I think a lot of it's going to depend on how this shakes up. But I'd really look for them to solidify that edge spot. I saw some people mock Jordan Davis there. I think that'd be interesting next to Vita Vea. I don't think that's a great spot for him, but I also think you could see them potentially take a chance on Boye Mafe, who I think is going to sneak into that first round. I'm not seeing him a ton in the first round right now, but I think you're going to see him go in this range in the first round. And I think the Bucks are a well-rounded enough team where they can take a chance on a guy, and that would be a direction that I look to go in. So that's the NFC South. If I was, once again, I will go further into predictions closer to the season, and I'm not going to pick every single game on camera, but I'll do it in my free time and go over the results with everybody. Um, the Bucks are going to win this division if Tom Brady's there. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. There's no arguing there. Behind that, I think it gets interesting. Depending who's playing Panthers for the quarterback does a lot for me because I think that defense is improved enough to where if they're a young defense still. If they take another step forward, I think the Panthers could finish second in this division with Sam Darnold as their quarterback. Eh, yeah, I don't know about that, but uh, if they just get, I mean, legitimately anybody at this point, even if Kenny Pickett's starting for them, I think they could finish second in this division. I do, and that's nothing against the Saints, or it's probably something against Falcons, but the Falcons are finishing last, so I had to flip flop between the Panthers and Saints at number two. I'm probably in the minority there. I think most people would say, yeah, this is the Saints, but I think the Panthers defense is going to be better than people give it credit for. If they address that offensive line and get a short-term answer at quarterback and then try to answer those questions next year, I think they could finish second in this division. So, all right, that's all that I have for this Friday night episode of Bet On It with Jerry and Jordan. So it's just Jordan tonight. I appreciate everybody who is watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go check out all the cool content that we have going on at Going for Two. Got a lot of draft coverage upcoming. Got some articles that are going to be posting. We got a whole bunch of people that are going to be going live for the draft as well, and I will be one of them. Not sure what day I'm going to go yet, but finalizing some of those details. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that, and we will see you guys. I will see you guys anyway in 2 weeks.